Everyone's so quiet and reverent. I appreciate it. Hi everyone, welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. My name is Car Johnson. I'm the event coordinator for Green Apple, and I'm excited to welcome tonight Jesse Nathan for the release of his collection, Eggtooth. Let's give a hand for Jesse. We're really happy to have a Bay Area poet here and to welcome back to the Bay Area Richie Hofmann. Let's give a hand for Richie. Welcome Armen Davoudian. Let's give a hand for Armen. Thank you for joining us both in person and online. Hello, online audience. We appreciate you. We are broadcasting from San Francisco. We are on unceded Ramaytush land, and we hope that you join us in our pledge to turn land acknowledgement into action by donating either your time or monetary means to an Indigenous organization every time you hear a land acknowledgement. I have very brief business before we get to the heart of the matter. We have seats in the front as well, and also all of this is seating if you're curious. Very brief business. Now is a good time to silence your phones if you have not already. I would say picture taking is encouraged, but you can run that by our poets if you want. Please do check out our full event calendar on our website at greenapplebooks.com. The restroom is behind us. It is available after the event and not during the event. It is available for attendees of our event during event time. It's kind of the one area that my colleagues have that is off the sales floor, and we try and respect it. But you are in our house tonight and our guests, and we want you to feel comfortable. If you have any questions about that, do let me know. We have books from all of our poets available at the front for purchase this evening. You can find them there. If you have been here before, you've definitely heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only do you support us as an independent bookstore, you support the writers who put so much work into making these books, and then you get to have a book, which might be the best part. So if you are able, please consider it. We always appreciate it. So we're going to hear from all three of our poets tonight, and then we are going to have a Q&A with Mr. Eggtooth himself, Jesse Nathan, at the end of the evening, so you can start thinking of questions now. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first reader. Richie Hofmann is the author of 2 books of poems, 100 Lovers and Second Empire. His poetry has appeared recently in the Paris Review, the New Yorker, Poetry, the Yale Review, and has been honored with the Ruth Lilly and Wallace Stegner fellowships. Please give another hand for Richie Hofmann.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Car. Thank you, Green Apple. Thank you, Unbound Edition Press, for helping us put this all together. It's really great to celebrate Jesse Nathan's really remarkable book, Eggtooth. Look how beautiful it is. It's not just a regular jacket, it's just half.
Your best.
It's gorgeous. I love it. So I'm really honored to celebrate this book. It's one of the remarkable books of this year, and also to read with my friend Armen, who has written the remarkable book of next year. So thanks for having me. I'm going to read new poems. Brand new. From my new manuscript, which is about, among other things, childhood. Something I haven't really written about. Lamb. I had a lamb I brought everywhere, who only had one eye. At the train stations, all the grown-ups would say, "Be mindful of your things, little boy. Someone will steal right out of your pocket or take the watch off your wrist." My dad had a beautiful overcoat. The lamb's white fur got smudged. My brother was a baby, and in the restaurants, the old waiters would pick him up and kiss him again and again on the cheek with their mustaches and tell my parents that they promised they would bring him back in a minute, but now they needed to show the chef. I don't remember when the eye became unglued, and who knows where it went. On long train rides, I remember falling asleep, putting my finger in the hole where it used to be. Once he had to go in an overhead bin, and he was freezing when I kissed him again. This is a poem called Men's Beds. I liked the music of Men's Beds. I thought it was so ugly as a phrase, men's beds, that I wanted to name a whole book that, and my friends said, please don't. But you can get a poem. There's things you can title a poem that you can't title a book. Men's Beds is one of them. I was promiscuous, with my feelings most of all. Under stars, I sprayed saline solution into 2 wine glasses and took out my contacts. I didn't want summer to end, but it did. Many lives happened inside those walls. And for a season, I wore a designer hoodie and got iced Americanos every morning. I slept in men's beds. They took turns breaking me. It felt good, but one's absence weighed on me like a death. Late summer blurred feelings together with rain. At least I wasn't going to be lonely. I moved around the city, buying paperbacks, putting sunscreen on my legs. Who hasn't yearned for a stranger? The trains were free. I mean, no one checked your ticket. I never really told a story in a poem, so I thought, you should tell a story in a poem. And this is the result. It's called Dolphin. A dolphin fell in love with me, probably because of my looks. People always said, "What a pretty boy you are." I was coming home from gymnasium. I was so sweaty from running. We all were. We all ran into the sea, its freshness. We gargled the water. We threw it from our hair. I washed my limbs in the waves, and I heard him calling. I didn't want the other boys to see, but I kept glancing at the shimmering sea, hoping he was there, my dolphin. I dreamed about becoming a dolphin, being carried on the waves, doing flips while the boys clapped from the docks, chasing the elegant boats, making choreography in their wakes. I dreamed. The sight of a dolphin is always a little bit magical, even on our island. But he liked that I was human. That is why he fell in love with me, because I wasn't a dolphin. He liked my singing voice. I blushed, but I knew he thought I was good at singing made-up songs. I never liked animals, not really trusting something that doesn't talk. But I knew what he felt. One day, I walked right into the water. I was surprised by how his skin felt, pricklier than it looks. He let me put my mouth to his blowhole. Oh my God, it was the saltiest thing I tasted. I held onto his fin and we swam. He always dove up so I could breathe. I came home exhilarated. My parents were mad I dripped all over the house, dragging my wet feet across the floor, dripping onto the pillows and the white blankets. Why are you swimming all evening when there's homework to be done? My mother said she could smell the salt and it disgusted her. Take a shower right now. Night entered the sea. Night where there is no future. I imagined his gray body against the waves. I sat in our courtyard with olive trees. Gulls laughed at me, the open door. Waking from the incomplete dream, I wanted to possess him. What a weird thing for a child to say, I know. Dolphins carried Dionysus to the underworld, disappearing each winter. Would mine carry me there? Winter came. The constellations disappeared. It's terrible what happens next, but our playing turned rough. It was an accident. I was bleeding in the water. I hardly noticed at first, but then the panic set in. I started thrashing in the water. My dolphin wanted to save me. He hadn't meant to cut my flesh with his sharp fin. The salt was stinging. I blacked out. I died on shore. My dolphin tossed me there, and he flung himself there too to die beside me. I am a little famous. I was loved by a dolphin. They minted coins that showed us playing. I never thought they would miss me. And they make songs about us, the humans, saying that dolphins were humans once and charmed by singing. I'll end with a shorter poem. It's called Breed Me. My sweat soaked the sheets. You used to be like everyone else, but then the way you hurt me, fingers, teeth, I grew accustomed to it. Then I craved it. Then I got bored, and other men tried to put death into my mouth. Angelic Richie, with bite marks, in such a clean room. I deplore clutter, but I do like flowers. A tall drinking glass filled with peonies, the color of underwear. I like hard and classical, the ceiling black like Caravaggio's wine. Through the blinds, obscure gods shined, making the outlines of my body a kind of emptiness. The ceiling fan pushed heat around, even though it was snowing outside. You forgave my love of surfaces. It's not a tragedy we couldn't have a child. I had a pain inside me, and I needed you to deepen it. Thank you.
Once more for Richie Hofmann. So moved as always, no surprise. Always delighted though. I'm delighted to introduce as well our next reader. Armen Davoudian is the author of The Palace of 40 Pillars, forthcoming from Tin House in March of 2024. You can find him here then. And his poems and translations from Persian appear in Poetry Magazine, The Hawkins Review, The Yale Review, and elsewhere. His chapbook, Swan Song, won the 2020 Frost Place competition. Armen grew up in Isfahan, Iran, and is a PhD candidate in English at Stanford University. Please welcome Armen Davoudian.
Hi.
It's really an honor to be here reading at Green Apple with Richie and Jesse, and I'll get right to it. Wake-up call. I can see my mother, apron over her nightgown, setting the table for breakfast. A stack of lavash steaming at the table. Honey and milk skim, feta with fruit, chickpea and chicken mash, dusted with cinnamon. I can see my father, already in his coveralls and cap, filling a cup to the brim with hot tap water, and emptying it into another cup, and emptying that cup into another, until all three are warmed for tea. I can hear the kettle whistling and pull the covers tight around my head against the coming light. For any moment now, they will open the door and lift the covers and find that I'm not there. Is the audio okay? Yeah, great. So this poem sort of recalls a, I don't know, like maybe a Middle Eastern version of the Romeo and Juliet called Layli and Majnun, who were star-crossed lovers. Layli comes from the Arabic word for night, and Majnun was the male half of the pair, and his name means crazy. Because he went mad pining for Layli. It's called Three Nights. It's morning where I was born, but night unravels here in the Western Hemisphere, reveries of return. Always the same old story. Here, there, now, then, love, pain, you'll never go home again. It will always be tomorrow in the country of the past, where a tyrant breaks his fast. There's time yet left to fight. This is the first night. And the night that's only mine, leather, jasmine, and wine, as my face lies abreast the sunset in your chest, or nuzzles your armpit, semen, sweat, and spit, mullah and vartapet. My God is in my bed, Majnun and Majnun. Let's sleep in until noon. Let flesh block out the light. This is the second night. And at the foot of the bed, the third night rests its head up against his paws. Leil, who defies the laws of Ishq, Amor, romance, like us a bundle of wants, and wears like us no pants, sleeps neutered and alone, may yet live many months, and yet may die today. Let there never be light. This is the final night. Okay. This is a poem from my mother called Coming Out of the Shower. I shut my eyes under the scalding stream, scrubbing off last night's dream, when suddenly I hear your voice again, as though it caught in the clogged drain and was sent bubbling back up from the other world where you're not my mother. This time it's really you. I'm really here. I blink. We do not disappear. Dad left, you say, to shower at the shop, so I don't need to stop just yet. And yet I do, unable to resume old customs, unlike you. In a one-bath, four-person household, we learned what we mustn't see. growing in time, so coolly intimate with one another's silhouette behind the opaque frosted shower screen that once more stands between us two. While at the mirror you apply foundation and concealer, I wash out my hair with rosewater shampoo, which means I'll smell like you all day. Mama, I shout, I'm coming out. And as you look away, I knot around me tight your lavender robe de chambre, cinching my waist, and clamber out of the tub, taking care not to step outside the cotton mat and drip on the cracked floor you've polished with such zeal. We are mirrored in each tile. Yet, you'd forgive this village, or forget. What else will you love me despite? So, word in this poem, next poem, Pasha, which was a name for a high-ranking officer in the Ottoman army. This poem takes place in Iran, where I grew up in an Armenian community. And it's called Holy Translators. I'll always be in love with Father the Quran. I'll wear a long black robe and never marry. I'll stroke my bushy beard and lecture on the holy translators of the 5th century who invented the Armenian alphabet to record the Bible. To translate means to carry from one place to another, like a jet. We are their inheritors in this Muslim country. We brought the printing press to Esfahan. We introduced oil lamps to Austria. We put the first rover on the moon. And when the Turks marched us to Syria, we sent a student my age to Berlin to plant a bullet in the Pasha's brain. One more poem. This poem sort of follows the journey of saffron, the spice, from when it's a little flour to when you spice a dish with it or spill it on your cookbook. Okay, saffron. Scarlet stigma, thin as a wish, fingers plucked from the flushed iris. Salt and sugar ground to dust, and rosewater bloomed to molten gold. In the marble crucible, my hand, limp from the pestle, spilled over the boards, soaking the page with fragrant saffron. One more failure. The instructions died to the letter. But that's no matter. Let it, planted and plucked, like us in other fields, and like us worn by salt and sweetness to what is, gild the day's last page, which even now, too soon, one stained finger turns beyond the stony lip. Thank you.
One more hand for Armen Davoudian, please. Here, and I'm excited to read your book, your forthcoming book. Very exciting. Last but most certainly not least, I'm excited to introduce Jesse Nathan, who was raised in Northern California and rural Kansas. He teaches literature at UC Berkeley, and he was a founding editor of the McSweeney's Poetry Series. His poems have appeared in the New York Review of Books, the Paris Review, and the New Republic. Eggtooth is his first book, and the reason we are here tonight. Give another hand for Jesse Nathan.
Thank
Thank you, Car, and thank you everyone for being here. Richie, Armen, those were beautiful poems. It's lovely to see all of you here. It's a real pleasure. This book draws on, as Car alluded to, a biography, I suppose, split between Northern California and rural Kansas, and those landscapes and experiences in blue state and red state America, to lean on the cliches there. But it's so I thought I might start by reading a poem about crossing between those two worlds, literally driving between them. This poem is called "If You Draw Rightly on a Wound, It Might Righten." If you draw rightly on a wound, it might righten. And that title comes from an understanding about the ancient art of tattooing. Began as a kind of shamanic activity that the earliest tattoos they found, they think were a kind of ritual healing process. There was some belief that if you draw rightly on a wound, it might righten. And this is a back and forth poem, catechism, question and answer. And so they drive over arid floors of long departed seas, and up with the land's ramp off the continental shield. They witness the mural of mountains emerge, and they span the North Platte near the train bridge trusses, career in the wind boom of trucks through basin, past bluff. Straight through? No, they stop at a tattooist's hut. What for? Why, to mark themselves for themselves. They sit there first? Yes, and they, what is it of? He gets a barn swallow. She gets a spiral. Where? His shoulder, her ankle. And what do they mean? So many questions. I don't know, but ink as blue as bruises may be a kind of trust, sealed and believed. And does it hurt? Of course. It seeps with dewdrops of blood. Why did they do it? Charm? Armor? Maybe. Certain pain is meditative. Are they happy? Well, they have a long hug. And after that, they drive till they arrive at the city. Soft sky, trees mighty, busy bridges, festooning the night. A lot of these poems were written just a few blocks from here, when I had an apartment over on 17th Avenue, and this was the bookstore that I would wander around in and daydream. So it's really especially lovely that it worked out to begin this book's journey here with this first reading and these amazing poets. This is City Beach, which of course I've always felt like one of the great features of San Francisco is that it ends in a beach, and that area of the city is, there's no highway serving it, there's no freeway, and so it has kind of a beach town feeling, and I've done a lot of wandering out there. Maybe some of you have too. This poem begins with an epigraph from Cicero, which I translated from the Latin as most excellent is dignified leisure. City Beach. We were watching the waves in their folding, from seats on the sand, where the sea came boiling, then withdrew from the land. The dolphins like curds popping up in a soup on a glittering loop, and ships going out, and ships coming in. And then a woman came darting out of a car, pulled over behind us, pulled off her pants and undid her top, and kept on at top speed, naked and fulgent and diving, and the pelicans, cruising, did not veer, and her breasts were flying, and the froth became her hair. This is called What Justin Said. Takes us back to rural Kansas. Yesterday it seemed here to Galva, on fire, velveteen ash, made the sunset an astonishing alibi. Goodbyes are such blind spots. The horse-headed oil pump nods up and down, but summer isn't finished beating the hell from us. Bindweed in the fields, creeping into ditches. Did you know our ancestors brought it in their seed wheat from the old country? Over my head, a horde of gnats forms a singing tower. A story there too, if you can read it. I read the roads, and the roads are visions of liquid in the dog days. Streaks of jets stack and fade, and when the green header of the John Deere met the metal cradle of the wheat truck, it made a call like a hawk dying. In a horn, the gold burst forth, how many acres worth, spilled in the stubble, and Dad fuming to the house. His mud clumps a trail upstairs. I hear him now, flop down, Fox News. I had a snout in the dream. I was one in a pack of raccoons, purple diamonds for eyes. We zombie walk long driveways and the ruts of ethnic lanes and get nailed by tractor trailers or hail. Did you know there's an ailing in our wheat known as straw breaker? I find bindweed terribly pretty, that pearly cup, that sand dollar cloud, but its roots unbridle a stringy lightning, a deep choking system. I'm unstrung, I'm rake-whacked. In 2 weeks, it's away to law school. I'm missing the whiff of anhydrous already. Ha! I trade this for Socrates' certiorari, habeas corpus, contortion by torts. Justin. This is called When It Was Justin. And then we lie still in our blue stem fortress. Nearby, our headstones, leaning and sinking, an apple in hand, a hat that reads, sport. No, what are you really? He asks, like a sphinx. That, I laugh, is what the miser said when sophomore year I played the tight-lipped, no-faced ghost of Christmas future. Remember my ringing straight at Scrooge one long-nailed finger? A friendly tease is a pleasing thing. I watch his teeth break the apple's skin, and with mineral glamour, he arches a brow. One year, I add, I wore a cloud of beard and played the shouting, cheddar-loving cruise ship castaway. Always, he interrupts, bit parts? Always, I say, a mask. And he kisses me right on the lips. Cottonwood, cotton drifts on the draft like a pillow's been shot. Once, I say, they cast me as singer. Cousin Roy, country singer wannabe. His smile lingers. thought I might read the first poem in the book, but I guess not first tonight. About a very hot day called Straw Refrain. Young gray cat puddled under the boxwood, only the eyes alert, oppressed to dirt. That hiss, the hiss of grasses hissing, what should? Blank road shimmers. On days like this, my mind, you hardly seem to be. On days like these. No. See that sidelong silver drum? That hisses a sigh of the propane tank. 2:00. You can smell it. Don't breathe that sigh. The creek's gone dry. Summer is wide as this wildered sky. Days like this. My mind, you hardly seem to be. Straw frail. No breeze. You had a theory that the birds would silence on a day like this. But the mocker's keenness and the kingbird and the vireos commence to warble on as heat bears down. A day like this, my mind, you hardly seem to be. You road, you creak. Hot days, more common than ever. The propane tank on the farm would get so heated up they would have to release pressure, hissing, terrible smell. Like a short poem of California. My imagination goes back and forth between these two places. My family left when I was 10, left the East Bay. And so I'm thoroughly split. As Mahmoud Darwish said, I have two languages. I forget with which I dream. This is called Canary Island date palm. And those are not the really tall ones. Those are Mexican fan palms. The Canary Island date palm is sort of shorter, rounder, heftier ones. Canary Island date palm. Couldn't say the dream I had last night. But I might start by saying your dates were motionless in a breeze, almost orange, like bittersweet, almost yellow, like bittersweet. Just a couple more. An eggtooth. It's a strange word. It overcame me. I sort of startled to find it's the title of this collection. It was late in the process, and a friend was helping me at that point with the book, and said, "No, this is I think the title." An eggtooth, if you're not familiar, it's the bit of cartilage on a baby bird's beak that develops in the egg and allows them to break out of that situation. Without it, they'd be it would have been an evolutionary bust. And once they break through, once they crack through the egg, it disappears. It evaporates. And it came to seem the figure, or a figure for this beginning, this first book, and the work that we do to be born again and again in our lives. So this is Eggtooth. And the other thing I guess I should say is that a lot of these poems ended up being in a form that I don't know what the word is. At different days I have different verbs for it. Stole, borrowed, appropriated, digested, a stanzaic shape from the metaphysical poet John Donne, centuries-old form. So a form that emerged in a totally different time and place, but that somehow came to feel right over many years as a way to register, I don't know, Armen once put it as the felt alienation of being, yeah, he's the smart guy. From this place, but not from it. So anyway, at some point in the process of the writing of this book, I or the speaker, or I don't know what's the terminology, had some sort of confrontation with Donne. So anyway, this is Eggtooth. And so at last, John Donne's ghost spoke, leaned up out of my book, and nearly bit me. 7, he says, sponsors creation, but also vice. 3 and 4, holy, but 3 marks the rooster's count. His face was gold, pounded thin. I say, he says, use me like an Eggtooth. Break the shell that shields you. Let me be the germ, hoarder of calcium, the bulb of sharp caruncle, expression of beak, of horn that makes a tootlet to snout thrust, a barb to barb what's chipped away by the very thing maintained and encased. Enamel glaze grades the puncturer's tool. Draw your breath by drawing a hole. Use my imbalanced device, half medieval, to shuck frank death as you surge with goodbye, as you fast and breathe and pay, supposing the face a blade, sustained to sing and to fly.
Wow.
I'll read 2 more and let me go. This is a poem called Foot Washers. I mean, it grows out of the, my mother is Mennonite, my father is Jewish, and so I was sort of, in the same way that I felt of California and of Kansas, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, felt the same way with regard to my parents and their backgrounds. But there's an interesting perspective offered by being on the fringes, being a little bit in but a little bit out. And anyway, I saw this foot washing ceremony when I was a kid a few different times, and it goes back to medieval times, old times, to wash a stranger's feet when they visit you. Sort of hard to imagine. It was usually done by servants, but the idea of the Mennonite church was that not just servants, but that everyone washed everyone's feet, which sort of blows my mind. Foot washers. Stout as a dance hall, white clappered, square. It stood between fields, a short piece from town, bordered by gravel, a butt by God's acre. This roominess, anchored by pews, through which wound mother in her special vamps and daddy in his monk straps to where a line of basins wait, warmish water lapping and the linen towels drape where feet of different walks have gathered, foot-foundered and fit alike, for each soul to cradle, douse, and bathe their right-hand neighbor's heel, instep, digits found immaculate, or blooming lint, or faint funk, or toenail paint, footloose, nail-mangled, imp. Most everybody's here. There's Auntie, who pronounces it pleasure as she communes with Sue, the drama coach, and Uncle, who keeps fake owls in his garden, who quizzes Tom, the sheriff, who's ticklish, as he sprinkles his toes, and down at heel Justin, who yesterday hunted mallards up a slough, splays his shovels to a wing-tipped banker. And there I am, turning over a word in my head, catenary, for parabolas that fountains form, word for the U a necklace makes, curve an upside-down arch, as I towel off a sprouting cousin's fallen arches, ankle bone, all 33 joints known and unknown that carry me away from home. I'll read just the final poem in the book, which again, I think, tries to connect these different worlds. It's called This Long Distance. Being on the phone across time zones. Sunday, in his grandmother's time, had been the day you went visiting. Noontime news topped with beet borscht and pickled pig's feet, cottage cheese stuffed in pancakes and spudding, silly talk, and coffee. His art, with his hopes, had conspired to conduct him many states away. But even now, when Sunday's here, he calls his kin. And when he'd call his parents, his dad would begin with weather. 5 inches since Friday, 7 3/10 since Monday. It may even hawk up more. And his mother would inveigh, or other times dial up other composings. First frost came, so we picked up the hoses, slid the barn door closed. Any minute now we'll get fresh straw for the stalls. Or she'd say how they butchered the hens. One had a clot of new eggs in her, ready to lay. Or she might tell stories about Larry, who never married and carried a snuff box. Or Dad would describe having recycled faxes that had blankened. Each message returned to the ether. And then the son might describe a minus tide, or tell how his shoulder, tattooed, has haired over, as if his swallow flies in a thicket. Or he'd ask, how low is the well? Or which kind of locust, again, is the swing tree? And so forth. They'd sneeze, cough, mention the soap house had had to be razzed, or that the catamaran was trounced in a squall, or how their bodies were giving out. An organ recital, they'd call it. And he, drinking coffee, might offer as balm the lights up the hills in the night in his city, described as the winkings of great piles of embers. And his mother might report on emerald leaves, emerald wheat, high, leaning cloud banks. Or his father might say that the starlings were mustering the pasture they could murder if they wanted. And the son, not really sure what then to say, says an iconic radio tower from where he sits presents like a cone jelly. And they, who in his imagination are in the dining room he knows well, hold up their phone up against the back window to let him hear the call, so personal and clear, of the train out there. Thank you.
Let's give one more hand for Jesse. So, I'm going to move into the Q&A portion of our evening. So talk amongst yourselves as I adjust this microphone stand. I actually already have a question from our online audience, if you'd like to take it. This is for you. Let's see. Is that good enough?
That's great.
Yes. Great. Well, since I'm here, and I have a question from our online audience, and we'll give you a moment to think of a question. Alex says, did growing up in a very red and a very blue state make you feel a bifurcated tension between the two extremes?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, definitely. They're two languages, they're two worlds, two different countries, and on the other hand, I feel at home in both. I feel deeply at home. You can drop me down anywhere in San Francisco, and really in the Bay Area, and I love to wander around the neighborhoods in the cities, just as I like to bike around the dirt roads in rural Kansas. I mean, I feel like at the time of the move, I was mostly dazed by it, and sort of became mute as an artist. I don't think I was aware that I was an artist at that point, but I stopped making anything artistic. But now I think also it has been a gift in the way that anything that doesn't destroy you is a gift. That it gives you these languages, and it feels especially important to this waning idea of the promise of this country right now. Can it hold? I'm not sure, but to travel back and forth has been a gift, as difficult and confusing as it is. Yeah, right.
I really love the music of your poems and the subtle rhymes, and the assonance is really lovely. Can you speak to that and how the music of the poems is a facet of argument or what you want to say?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, to me, that's kind of everything in poetry. Is the music, the way the words vibrate against one another, the way they make contact. I love the idea, the Yeats's idea of threshold music, that the music of the poem is what actually brings you to a place where an insight can matter or last, or a dream can take hold, or a vision can have root. The music is the secret to that, it seems to me, and that true in my favorite prose as well, in the work of Toni Morrison or Lenny Michaels. It's the music of the words is what opens up the possibility of everything else for me. So I compose. Sometimes I start in a notebook. Sometimes I start on the computer. But there's always a stage where I'm kind of roaming around. And with this book, it was roaming around these neighborhoods and the beach, trying to kind of memorize the poem, and saying it aloud and kind of looking like I've lost my mind, probably, muttering. And right, exactly, fit right in. It's and that's a refining process. That's and that's really the test. It's not that I don't care about what the words mean, but it's that the semantic aspect, or the message, as my students sometimes say, I feel like it has to come out of the form and the music, and the rest is editorial in a way, which is fine, and there's a place for that, but I didn't study creative writing. I was kind of drifting from field to field in college and beyond, history and psychology. And one of the things about all those disciplines is that they're just prose, and that was not quite enough for me. I needed something that was bodily, that was music, that was an intelligence or an understanding that comes from the diaphragm, the lungs, the mouth, the teeth, this being in a body. And I think in that sense, poetry is the art in language that where that is allowed or necessary in a way that in other disciplines in which we use language, it's kind of it's either an afterthought or it's actually not encouraged. So the music is everything. It's how I find my way to what I know, little as that is. It's in the music. Yeah.
When did you start writing poetry? At what point?
It's a good question. I have had to revise my own story of that because I found some early tinkerings with poems at a very young age. But I was always drawing and painting. That went dormant when I moved to Kansas, and the sort of shock of it as starting fifth grade. But I grew up in a house in which there was a lot of language, a lot of reading books, not necessarily literature, but there was a love for the right word. And so I'm not sure when it actually turned into poems. I'm sort of slow, as you can tell from this book, taking as long as it has. And part of that is because I just not sure what else there is, if not the obsession with the right word, which drags it out. But I think I started writing in my early 20s. Someone broke my heart. That's the usual story, right? And what else to do but try to write a poem. So I think that's where it began. But I have now found, other earlier subterranean versions of poems. But I resisted for a long time. I tried to do everything but write poems. I had all kinds of odd jobs, as if there was some part of me that felt like poetry was not enough or not sufficient. So it was a long time before I could use that. I could say I'm a poet. It felt really absurd. But some things you just don't have a choice in the end. So for better or worse, it claimed me.
Were there any John Donne poems that you found you kept coming back to, or maybe particularly Eggtoothy or useful? Yeah.
Well, the stanza comes from he used it in a few different poems, especially early on. The Good Morrow is the famous one, and there's a sense of the thing I love about that poem and about Donne is that it sort of grabs you by the collar. What did we do before we loved? That poem says, were we sort of idiots? There's a kind of directness in that poem, especially. So I feel like that poem. There are several others he uses in that form. I think maybe 4 or 5. But that one haunted me. It's a very strange thing. I wrote the first poem in that form 15 years ago. It appeared in the American Poetry Review, and I never sort of thought again about it for a long time. But realized that it had somehow achieved something, had broken through something. It was many years before I kind of came back to that. And I had a stretch of time, I had a fellowship, and I and I thought I would just revise a manuscript. I kept coming back to that Donne poem and to the poem that I'd written in that form, and thought, oh, I'll try another one. And before long, I wasn't revising the book. I was writing this entire sequence, which kind of became the new book. I wish that I had a more responsible answer, but it's so much of it is unconscious, or again, sort of being compelled or obsessed without quite knowing why. I hope that's useful.
Very.
Ben.
I wanted to ask about the refrain and repetition, because in the opening poem sort of sets the stage for that, and then ends on that image of the train song, the train call, and it feels like the refrain and the repetition throughout. It's just it's really pleasurable to listen to, and I just wanted to ask you about what that means for you, or how that shows up in your process.
Yeah. I have, I go back and forth. Sometimes to me, repetition feels ecstatic, and sometimes it feels like a kind of stuckness. There's a sort of trauma version of repetition where you can't get out, and then there's a sort of liberated joy also in the over and over and over, and I go back and forth. I think in the book and in life, so I and it also goes back to Randy's question about music and threshold music, and the sense that in a sense there is no repetition. There is no repeating. There's only rhyming. There's only nearness, almost, and I love that discrepancy. It feels like there's so much meaning in the gap between a thing that occurs once and then occurs almost the same way, but not quite, which is the way days are, I think, for me anyway, the way life is, and the meaning is in that gap. When a phrase or a word has traveled through a poem or through a book, or through a life, and picks up new meanings along the way, or new resonances, or new encounters, it can't ever be quite the same, but it looks the same, like a family resemblance. And I love that sense of change and continuity. So again, I find it to be one of the crucial tools, and one of the things that the old forms offer. I mean, I don't go to the old forms for nostalgia. I'm not really interested in nostalgia. I'm interested in the way they're alive, or can be alive. Again, I'm not willing to cede tradition to the reactionaries, and I think repetition is one of the ancient traditions of poetry, incantation. Yeah, maybe one more question.
I believe your dad exposed you early in life to the poetry of the game of baseball. What sense do you have in this book that the beauty and poetry of the sport might have been an influence in this book?
Yeah,
Indirectly,
poetry,
perhaps.
Poetry and baseball. I don't think there's any baseball in this book.
No, but there's got to be something, I think.
No, it's a good question. Yeah, it's in me. I mean, I don't really care much for sports except for baseball. It's, to me, it's a kind of another art form, and I think it's not a coincidence that there are a lot of poets, American poets, who have been somewhat obsessed with baseball. I mean, I'm kind of sheepish about it because I feel like it links me to a sort of sports culture that I don't really identify with, but the grace and the kind of meaningless beauty of the game, of the dance, reminds me of poetry, reminds me of art, the sort of subtle and shifting, I can get lost in
And
that.
it goes on and
It
on.
goes on. There's no time. The fact that there's no clock.
It's beyond eternity.
Right. That's crucial to me. It's infinite. So they seem like separate worlds, but they're both obsessions: poetry and baseball. Yeah, I'm working on a piece for the Times about this, actually. So more on that in a few weeks. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
We should talk about the pitch clock though, because I think it's really changed baseball.
That's
Oh, good. Oh, okay, great. Okay. That's very fun. Let's give Jesse and Richie Hofmann and Armen Davoudian one more time. Congratulations. Thank you for letting us celebrate with you, and thank you both for sharing your time and talent. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for being here to celebrate with us too, and thank you to our actually very engaged online audience. I will show you the chat; they're very engaged. And we so.
Where's the camera?
I am just here to let you know that we have books from all three of our poets at the front register. You can find them there, and I am going to set Jesse up at the back desk here to sign copies. And you can find our other poets individually to politely ask them to sign their books as well. If you have any other questions, let me know, and if not, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.